How did one night out at the club while wearing my wedding ring end with a process server handing me divorce papers at work? What did my husband uncover that made him go from silent suffering to taking control? And what did everyone around us really see? This is the story of how I lost everything I thought I could manipulate and justify. The bass was pounding through my chest as I adjusted my wedding ring, making sure it caught the club's neon lights just right. I wasn't hiding anything. I was Eirene Veyra, 34 years old, and I deserved to feel alive again. Simon sat at our table like a statue, nursing his beer while I danced with anyone who'd give me attention. "Come on, Simon," I called over the music, grinding against some stranger whose name I hadn't bothered to learn. "Live a little." My husband's face was stone. His dark eyes tracked my every movement as I pressed closer to the guy behind me, letting his hands rest on my hips. The ring felt heavy on my finger, but not heavy enough to stop me. Kellen Dre appeared beside me like he always did, Simon's old friend who understood what I needed. His hands found my waist as we moved together, our bodies fitting perfectly to the rhythm. I could feel Simon's stare burning into us, but I didn't care. This was what I'd been missing. "Your husband looks thrilled," Kellen whispered in my ear, his breath hot against my neck. I glanced back at Simon, who was gripping his beer bottle so tight his knuckles had gone white. "He's just jealous because he can't dance." My sister Lauren appeared with another round of shots, her eyes bright with mischief. "Eirene, you're on fire tonight." "Finally," I laughed, downing the shot. Someone appreciates when a woman knows how to have fun. The stranger behind me pulled me closer, his hand sliding lower. I should have stopped him, should have remembered the weight of my ring, but the attention felt too good. When was the last time Simon had looked at me like I was desirable? When was the last time he'd made me feel wanted? "Maybe we should tone it down," Kellen said, but his hand stayed on my waist. "Why? Because my husband can't handle seeing his wife enjoy herself?" I spun around, pressing my back against Kellen's chest. "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just dancing." But even as I said it, I knew I was crossing lines. The stranger's hands were definitely too low now, and Kellen's body was pressed against mine in ways that went beyond friendly. The wedding ring felt like it was burning my finger, but I ignored it. Simon stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Our eyes met across the crowded dance floor, and for a moment I saw something that made my stomach drop. It wasn't just hurt anymore, it was calculation, like he was memorizing everything. "Where's he going?" Lauren asked, following my gaze. Simon was walking toward the exit, his shoulders rigid with tension. He didn't look back, didn't make a scene. He just left. "Good riddance," I said, but my voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Now we can really have fun." Kellen's grip tightened on my waist. "Eirene, maybe you should..." "Should what? Go running after him like a good little wife?" I turned in his arms, my face inches from his. I'm tired of walking on eggshells around Simon's feelings. The stranger who'd been dancing with me melted away into the crowd, probably sensing the drama. But I barely noticed. Kellen was looking at me with those intense blue eyes, and suddenly the club felt too hot, too crowded. "Let's get some air," he said. We made our way to the smoking area outside, where the cool night air hit my flushed skin. Loren followed, along with our friends Dina and Marcus. "That was intense," Dina said, lighting a cigarette. "Simon looked ready to kill someone." "Simon's always dramatic," I said, but my hands were shaking as I reached for my phone. 3 missed calls from my husband. "He can't stand seeing me happy." "Maybe he just doesn't like watching his wife dry hump other guys," Marcus said quietly. Everyone went silent. I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. "I wasn't dry humping anyone," I snapped. "I was dancing. There's a difference." "Is there?" Marcus asked. "Because from where I was sitting it looked like..." "Like what? Like a woman having fun? God forbid." I was getting louder now, drawing stares from other clubgoers. "Just because you're all boring doesn't mean I have to be." Kellen put a hand on my shoulder. Hey, let's not fight. The night's still young. But something had shifted. The magic was gone, replaced by an uncomfortable tension that settled over our group like a wet blanket. I could see the judgment in their eyes, the way they exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. I'm going home, I announced, grabbing my purse. Want me to drive you? Kellen offered. No. The word came out sharper than I intended. I can take care of myself. The Uber ride home was torture. Every street light that flashed through the window reminded me of Simon's face when he left the club. But I pushed the guilt away, replacing it with righteous anger. I wasn't the problem here. He was. He was the one who couldn't handle having a confident, attractive wife. Our house was dark when I got home, except for a single light in Simon's home office. I could see his silhouette through the frosted glass door, hunched over his computer. Probably sulking, I thought, or maybe planning another one of his passive-aggressive silent treatments. I kicked off my heels and crept upstairs, hoping to avoid a confrontation. But as I passed Lila's room, I heard her small voice. Mummy? I peeked into our 7-year-old daughter's room. She was sitting up in bed, her dark hair messy from sleep. What's wrong, baby? Daddy came home upset. He was making noise in his office. Her voice was small, worried. Are you and Daddy fighting? My heart clenched. No, sweetheart. Daddy's just working. Go back to sleep. But as I tucked her in, I could see the anxiety in her eyes. Kids always knew when something was wrong, even when adults tried to hide it. I went to our bedroom, but Simon wasn't there. The bed was cold, untouched. I could hear the faint clicking of keyboard keys from downstairs, a steady rhythm that continued well into the night. What was he doing down there? And why did I have the sinking feeling that tonight had changed everything? I woke up alone. The space beside me in our king-sized bed was cold, the pillows undisturbed. Simon had never come to bed. Downstairs, I found him in the kitchen making coffee, still wearing yesterday's clothes. His hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. Morning, I said, trying to sound normal. He didn't respond, didn't even look at me. Just poured his coffee and sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. Simon, we need to talk about last night. Do we? His voice was flat, emotionless. I think you made your position pretty clear. I sat down across from him, noting how he immediately closed his laptop screen. Look, I know you're upset, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. I was just dancing. Finally, he looked at me. His dark eyes were cold, analytical. It was like looking at a stranger. Dancing, he repeated. Is that what you call letting random men grope you while your husband watches? Nobody was groping me. God, you make it sound so sordid. I could feel my temper rising. I was having fun for the first time in months. I'm sorry if that threatens your fragile ego. Simon's jaw tightened, but he didn't take the bait. Instead, he opened his laptop again and started typing. What are you doing? I demanded. Work. It's Sunday morning, Simon, and we're trying to have a conversation. No, you're trying to justify what you did last night. I'm trying to focus on something productive. The dismissal stung. I was used to Simon being hurt, used to his quiet disappointment. But this cold indifference was new and unsettling. Fine, be a martyr. See if I care. I stood up, my chair scraping against the tile floor. I'm going to check on Lila. Our daughter was in the living room, curled up on the couch watching cartoons, but I could tell she was listening to every word from the kitchen. Hey, sweetheart, want some breakfast? She nodded, but her eyes were worried. Is Daddy mad at you? Daddy's just tired, baby. He stayed up too late working. It wasn't technically a lie, but it felt like one. Lila was smart for her age. Too smart. She could sense the tension crackling between her parents like electricity before a storm. I made her pancakes, trying to create some normalcy, but the silence from the kitchen was deafening. Simon had always been the more involved parent, the one who helped with homework and read bedtime stories. If he was pulling away from me, How long before he pulled away from Lila, too? The thought made my chest tight with panic. Around noon, my phone rang. Eirene Veyra, Simon's mother. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but that would only make things worse. Hello, Helen. Eirene, dear. How are you? Her voice had that particular tone, the one that meant she'd already talked to Simon. I'm fine, just having a quiet Sunday with the family. Simon mentioned you had quite the night out yesterday. My grip tightened on the phone. Did he? Well, you know how Simon exaggerates when he's in one of his moods. Does he? There was steel in her voice now. Because from what I heard, you were rather public in your affections. Heat flooded my cheeks. How much had Simon told her? And why was he running to Mummy instead of dealing with his wife like an adult? I think there's been some misunderstanding, Helen. I went out with friends and had a few dances. That's hardly scandalous. With your wedding ring on. The question hit like a slap. Excuse me. Your wedding ring, dear. Were you wearing it while you were dancing with other men? I couldn't speak for a moment. The accusation hung in the air between us, heavy with implications I wasn't ready to face. Of course I was wearing my ring. I always wear my ring. How interesting. And what message do you think that sends? I think it sends the message that I'm a married woman who's secure enough in her relationship to have fun without her husband breathing down her neck every second. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. I see, Helen finally said. Well, I hope you'll join us for Sunday dinner today. We'd love to see you and Lila. It wasn't really an invitation, it was a summons, and we both knew it. Of course, we'll be there at 2. After I hung up, I found Simon still in the kitchen, still typing. But now there were papers spread across the table, printouts of something I couldn't quite see from the doorway. Your mother invited us to dinner. I know. I already told her we'd be there. What did you tell her about last night? He looked up at me then, and I saw something that made my blood run cold. It was the same calculating look he'd had at the club, like he was studying me for weaknesses. I told her the truth. Which is? That my wife spent the evening grinding on strangers while wearing her wedding ring, and when her husband tried to talk to her about it, she told him he was being paranoid and jealous. That's not what happened. Isn't it? He turned his laptop screen toward me. Then explain this. It was a Facebook post from Loren, uploaded at 2:47 a.m., a series of photos from the club, including one of me pressed against Kellen, his hands on my waist, my head thrown back in laughter. Another of me dancing with the stranger, his hands clearly below my hips. In every photo, my wedding ring was clearly visible, catching the camera flash like a beacon. The caption read, Eirene knows how to party. Some husbands just can't handle a confident woman. #girls night. #living my best life. My stomach dropped. Simon, I can explain. Can you? Because it looks pretty self-explanatory to me. He closed the laptop with a sharp click. Get dressed. We don't want to be late for dinner. As he walked past me toward the stairs, I caught his arm. Please, let's talk about this. I know how it looks, but... He pulled away from my touch like I'd burned him. How it looks? Eirene, this isn't about appearances. This is about respect. And you made it very clear last night how much you respect our marriage. That's not fair. Fair? He turned back to me, and for the first time since I'd known him, Simon looked dangerous. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I had to sit there and watch my wife humiliate me in front of our friends? Is it fair that our daughter had to see her father come home alone because her mother was too busy getting attention from other men? Lila doesn't know anything about... Lila knows everything, Eirene. Kids aren't stupid. She asked me why Mommy was dancing with Uncle Kellen like that. She asked me why you didn't come home with me. So tell me, what exactly am I supposed to say to our 7-year-old daughter? The words hit me like physical blows. I hadn't thought about Lila seeing those photos, hadn't considered that other parents from her school might have seen them too. I'll talk to Lauren about taking down the post. It's already been shared 12 times. But sure, closing the barn door after the horses have run away seems like a solid strategy. He continued up the stairs, leaving me standing in the kitchen with my heart pounding and my hands shaking. This was spiraling out of control, faster than I could manage it. I needed to fix this, needed to get ahead of the narrative before Simon's family turned completely against me. But first, I had to figure out exactly what Simon had seen, what he knew, and what he was planning to do about it. The papers on the kitchen table caught my eye again. I crept closer, trying to see what he'd been printing. Bank statements, phone records. My pulse quickened as I recognized the AT&T logo on one of the pages. Find anything interesting? I spun around. Simon was standing in the doorway, fully dressed for dinner, watching me with those cold, analytical eyes. I was just cleaning up, I stammered. Of course you were. He gathered the papers and tucked them into a folder. Ready to go. As we drove to his parents' house, Lila chattering nervously in the back seat, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into an ambush. And the worst part was, I wasn't sure I had any ammunition to fight back. Eirene Veyra's house smelled like pot roast and disappointment. The moment we walked through the front door, I could feel the judgment radiating from every family photo on the walls. Simon's mother appeared in the hallway, her silver hair perfectly styled, her smile as sharp as a knife. Eirene, dear, don't you look refreshed? The way she said it made it clear she'd seen the Facebook photos. Probably the whole family had. Thank you, Helen. You look lovely as always. Martin, Simon's father, emerged from his study with a forced smile. He was a gentle man, a retired accountant who preferred avoiding conflict to confronting it. But even he seemed uncomfortable, his usual warm greeting replaced with a polite nod. Simon, son, good to see you. They embraced, and I noticed how Martin's hand lingered on Simon's shoulder, a gesture of support that excluded me entirely. Lila ran to her grandparents, breaking some of the tension. Helen's face softened as she hugged our daughter, but the moment she looked back at me, the warmth disappeared. Lila, sweetheart, why don't you go play in the backyard? Grandpa set up the new swing set. As soon as Lila was out of earshot, the real conversation began. So, Helen said, leading us into the living room, I understand you had quite the adventure last night. It wasn't an adventure, I said, settling onto the couch. It was just a normal night out with friends. Normal. Helen repeated the word like it tasted bitter. How interesting. In my day, married women didn't consider grinding on strangers to be normal behavior. Helen, Martin started, but she held up a hand. No, Martin, this needs to be said. She turned back to me, her blue eyes blazing. I've seen the photos, Eirene. We all have. And frankly, I'm disgusted. My cheeks burned, but I forced myself to stay calm. I think you're overreacting. I was dancing, that's all. Dancing? Helen's voice rose an octave. You call that dancing? Because where I come from, we call that public foreplay. Helen, that's enough, Simon said quietly. But he didn't defend me. He just sat there, watching the confrontation unfold like he was studying a chess match. Is it enough, Simon? Because your wife has made a fool of your entire family. Do you know that 3 different people from church sent me those photos this morning? 3. They wanted to make sure I knew what kind of woman my son had married. The words hit like physical blows. Church people had seen the photos. That meant half the town probably knew by now. I'm sorry if some people misinterpreted. Misinterpreted? Helen stood up, her hands clenched into fists. There's no misinterpreting a married woman letting strange men put their hands all over her body while she wears her wedding ring like some kind of trophy. That's not what happened. Then what did happen, Eirene? Please, enlighten us. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my son's wife has forgotten what marriage means. I looked at Simon, desperate for support, but he was staring at his hands. Martin had disappeared into the kitchen, probably to avoid the confrontation entirely. Simon and I are fine, I said, my voice shaking. This is between us, not the whole family. Are you fine, Simon? Helen asked pointedly. Simon looked up then, and the pain in his eyes was unmistakable. "No, Mom, we're not fine." The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. I felt something crack inside my chest. "Simon, please, can we talk about this privately?" "Why? So you can tell me I'm being paranoid again? So you can explain how letting other men touch you is somehow my fault?" "I never said it was your fault." "Didn't you? Because last night you made it pretty clear that I was the problem. That I was too jealous, too controlling, too boring." Helen was watching this exchange with grim satisfaction, like she was finally seeing her son stand up for himself. "I think," she said slowly, "that some people need to remember what they have to lose." The threat was clear. I was on thin ice, and everyone knew it. Dinner was torture. Lila sensed the tension and barely touched her food. The adults made stilted conversation about weather and work, but the real conversation was happening in loaded glances and meaningful silences. After dinner, Helen cornered me in the kitchen while the men watched football. "I want you to understand something," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "Simon is my son, Lila is my granddaughter. You're replaceable." "Excuse me." "You heard me. I've watched that boy love you for 8 years, watched him put your needs before his own, watched him make excuses for your selfish behavior. But everyone has limits, Eirene, even Simon." "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I? I know you've been texting Kellen Dre at all hours. I know you've been lying about where you go during your lunch breaks. I know you deleted messages from your phone yesterday morning." My blood turned to ice. "How do you—" "Because Simon tells me things, because he's been keeping track of your lies for months, waiting for you to come clean. But you haven't, have you? You've just gotten better at hiding." The kitchen felt like it was spinning. "Simon's been spying on me. Simon's been protecting himself, and it's about time." Helen stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You think you're so clever, don't you? You think you can manipulate everyone around you, make them doubt what they see with their own eyes. But you've made a mistake, dear." "What mistake?" "You've pushed a patient man too far, and patient men, when they finally break, tend to be very thorough in their revenge." Before I could respond, Simon appeared in the doorway. "Ready to go?" The drive home was silent except for Lila's chatter about the new swing set, but I could feel Simon's tension radiating from the driver's seat, could see his white knuckles gripping the steering wheel. When we got home, I put Lila to bed while Simon disappeared into his office again. I could hear him on the phone, his voice too low to make out words, but the tone serious, businesslike. I crept closer to the door, pressing my ear against the wood. "Yes, I understand the retainer fee. Tuesday works. I'll have all the documentation ready." My heart stopped. Documentation. Retainer fee. He was talking to a lawyer. I backed away from the door, my hands shaking. This was really happening. Simon wasn't just angry, he was planning something, and from the sound of it, he'd been planning for a while. My phone buzzed, a text from Kellen. "Hey, crazy night last night. Your husband seemed pretty upset. Everything okay?" I stared at the message, knowing I should delete it, knowing that whatever Simon was documenting probably included my phone records. But I needed an ally, someone who understood that I wasn't the villain in this story. "He's being dramatic. Can we talk tomorrow?" The response came immediately. "Maybe we should cool it for a while. I don't want to cause problems in your marriage." Problems in my marriage, like he wasn't already neck deep in those problems, like his hands hadn't been all over me just 24 hours ago. "Since when do you care about my marriage?" I typed back, but the 3 dots indicating he was typing appeared and disappeared several times before he finally responded. "Since your husband started asking mutual friends about our friendship, maybe we should meet for coffee tomorrow, somewhere public." My stomach dropped. Simon had been asking about Kellen, which meant he suspected more than just dancing, which meant I was in deeper trouble than I'd thought. Monday morning at work felt like walking through a minefield. Every glance from my co-workers seemed loaded with meaning. Every whispered conversation felt like it was about me. I'd been an administrative assistant at Morrison and Associates for 6 years, and I'd never felt so exposed. "Girl, you look like hell," Dina Morales said, appearing at my desk with 2 cups of coffee. At 38, Dana was my closest work friend, a fellow survivor of divorce who understood what it meant to fight for your independence. "Thanks for the pep talk," I muttered, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Seriously though, what's going on? You've been checking your phone every 5 seconds." I glanced around the office, making sure no one was listening. "Simon's acting weird. Weirder than usual." "Weird how?" "Cold, distant, and I think he might be talking to a lawyer." Dina's eyebrows shot up. "About what?" "About Saturday night, about the club." I pulled up the Facebook photos on my phone, showing her Lauren's post. "He's acting like I committed some kind of crime." Dina studied the photos, her expression thoughtful. "Okay, I can see why he might be upset. But a lawyer, that seems extreme." "That's what I thought. It's not like I cheated or anything. I was just having fun." "Right, and there's nothing wrong with that." Dina leaned closer, lowering her voice. "But maybe you should be careful for a while. Men get crazy when they feel threatened." At lunch, I met Kellen at a small cafe downtown, far from both our workplaces. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall like he was expecting trouble. "This is ridiculous," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "We're acting like criminals." "Maybe because your husband is treating us like criminals." Kellen's usual easy confidence was gone, replaced by nervous energy. "Do you know he called my boss?" "What?" "This morning. Said he was doing a reference check for some IT consulting work. But I don't buy it. I think he was fishing for information about my schedule, my character, whatever." My coffee suddenly tasted like ash. Simon wouldn't do that. Wouldn't he? Because the Simon I remember from college was pretty methodical when he wanted to be. Remember when Jake Morrison tried to cheat him out of that programming project? Simon didn't get mad. He got even. And he was very, very thorough about it. I'd forgotten about that incident. Simon had systematically documented every instance of Jake's academic dishonesty, then presented it to the dean in a file so comprehensive it got Jake expelled. "This is different," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. "Is it? Because I'm starting to think Saturday night was the last straw, not the first problem." Kellen was right, and I knew it. The signs had been there for months. Simon's growing distance, his sudden interest in my schedule, the way he'd started asking casual questions about my day that felt more like interrogations. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we should cool it for a while. Let things settle down." "Cool what? We're friends, Kellen. We haven't done anything wrong." But even as I said it, I could feel the lie in my throat. The lingering touches, the flirtatious texts, the way we'd been dancing around the edges of something more for months. It wasn't nothing. "Haven't we?" Kellen's blue eyes were serious. "Because I've been thinking about Saturday night, and I'm not sure either of us can claim innocence here." "Nothing happened, didn't it? Because I remember my hands on your waist. I remember the way you pressed against me. I remember thinking about kissing you." The words hung between us like a confession. I felt my cheeks burn because I remembered thinking about kissing him too. "But we didn't," I whispered. "No, but we wanted to. And your husband saw that want, Eirene. He saw it, and now he's doing something about it." After lunch, I couldn't concentrate on work. Every phone call made me jump. Every email notification sent my heart racing. When my phone buzzed with a text from Simon, I nearly dropped it. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." It was the kind of message he'd sent hundreds of times before, but now it felt ominous. What was he working on? And why did I have the feeling it had nothing to do with his job? I left work early, claiming a dentist appointment I didn't have, but instead of going home, I found myself driving aimlessly around town, trying to process everything that was happening. My phone rang. "Lauren." "Hey sis, how are you holding up?" "I've been better," Simon's family basically crucified me yesterday. Screw them. They're just jealous because you know how to have fun and they're all repressed. It was exactly what I needed to hear. You really think so? I know so. Look, maybe Simon's reaction is telling you something about your marriage. Maybe this is a wake-up call that you need more than what he's giving you. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time to stop apologizing for having needs. Maybe it's time to figure out what you really want. What I really wanted, the question had been haunting me for months. I wanted to feel desired, appreciated, alive. I wanted someone to look at me like I was the most interesting person in the room. Simon used to look at me that way, but when was the last time? When was the last time he'd made me feel like anything other than a roommate with shared bills? I think I might be in love with Kellen, I whispered. The words surprised me even as I said them. But once they were out, I couldn't take them back. Oh, honey, that changes things. Does it? Because he's pulling away now. Getting scared because Simon's asking questions. Then maybe it's time to make a choice. Figure out what you want and go after it. Life's too short to live for other people's approval. When I got home, Simon's car wasn't in the driveway. Lila was at her friend Emma's house for a play date, which meant I was alone with my thoughts and my guilt. I found myself in Simon's office, staring at his desk. The folder from yesterday was gone, but there were other papers scattered around. Printouts of phone bills, bank statements, credit card records. My hands shook as I picked up one of the phone bills. My number was highlighted in yellow, along with Kellen's. Every call, every text, going back 3 months. There was a notebook open beside the papers, filled with Simon's precise handwriting. Dates, times, locations. A timeline of my deception that was frighteningly accurate. March 15th, he claims dentist appointment, no charge on insurance. Kellen's car seen at Riverside Cafe during lunch. March 22nd, E deletes text thread, claims phone glitch. April 3rd, E works late, building security shows she left at 5:15 p.m. Page after page of documentation, building a case I didn't even know I was helping him construct. At the bottom of the most recent page, in red ink, were the words, Consult attorney, Tuesday, 2 p.m. Tomorrow. He was seeing a lawyer tomorrow. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Veyra, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the police department. Your husband has reported some concerns about harassment. Could you call me at your earliest convenience? The phone slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto Simon's desk. Harassment? What harassment? But even as I asked the question, I knew the answer. The late-night texts to Kellen, the deleted messages, the lies about my whereabouts. Simon wasn't just documenting my affair, he was building a case for something much bigger. I was pacing the kitchen when Simon finally came home at nearly midnight. My nerves were shot from hours of waiting, from staring at that text from Detective Chen, from trying to figure out how everything had spiraled so far out of control. We need to talk, I said the moment he walked through the door. Simon set his briefcase down carefully, his movements deliberate and calm. Do we? Don't play games with me, Simon. I know you've been documenting everything. I know you called a lawyer, and I know you somehow got the police involved. He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw something I'd never seen before in his eyes, complete emotional detachment, like he was looking at a stranger. You went through my office. It's my house too. Is it? Because lately, it feels more like a hotel you occasionally sleep in between your other activities. I felt the familiar surge of defensive anger. What's that supposed to mean? It means I know about the fake dentist appointments, Eirene. I know about the long lunches at Riverside Cafe. I know about the deleted text messages and the lies about working late. Each accusation hit like a physical blow. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. Simon walked to the kitchen table and opened his briefcase, pulling out a thick manila folder. He spread the contents across the table, with the precision of a prosecutor presenting evidence. Phone records, bank statements, credit card receipts, printed screenshots of deleted text messages, security camera footage from my office building, and photos, so many photos I didn't even know existed. "Let's start with this one," Simon said, pointing to a grainy security camera image. "March 15th, 1:47 p.m. That's you entering Kellen's apartment building. You told me you were at the dentist." My mouth went dry. "How did you—" "I'm an IT analyst, Eirene. I know how to track digital footprints, your phone's GPS data, credit card locations, social media check-ins that you forgot to disable." He pulled out another photo. "March 22nd, 2:23 p.m. Kellen's car in the parking lot of the Riverside Cafe. Your car is 3 spaces away. You told me you were having lunch with Dina." "Simon, I can explain." "Can you? Because I called Dina. She was very confused about these alleged lunch dates you've been having." The room felt like it was spinning. "You called my friend?" "I called your alibi. And when your alibi doesn't know what you're talking about, it stops being an alibi and starts being evidence of deception." He pulled out a stack of papers, printed text messages with timestamps and phone numbers clearly visible. "These are the messages you thought you deleted. Did you know that cell phone companies keep records of everything? Every text, every call, every photo sent through their networks?" I stared at the papers, seeing my own words reflected back at me like accusations. Flirty messages to Kellen, complaints about Simon, plans to meet in secret. It all looked so much worse in black and white. "This isn't what it looks like, isn't it? Because it looks like my wife has been having an emotional affair for months, lying about her whereabouts, and using our joint credit card to pay for dates with another man." "They weren't dates." "Then what were they?" Simon's voice was getting louder now, his careful control starting to crack. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been living a double life." I was confused. I was going through something. "What you were going through was a marriage. My marriage. Our marriage." He slammed his hand on the table, making the papers jump. "Do you have any idea what it's been like? Watching you slip away, watching you lie to my face, watching you choose him over me every single day. I never chose him over you. Didn't you? Because every time you lied about where you were going, you chose him. Every time you deleted a message, you chose him. Every time you touched him at that club while wearing my ring, you chose him." The pain in his voice was devastating. I could see 8 years of marriage crumbling in his eyes, could see the man who'd loved me unconditionally finally reaching his breaking point. "Simon, please. I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can—" "Fix this?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "How exactly do we fix the fact that my wife has been cheating on me for months?" "I wasn't cheating. I never slept with him." "You think that matters? You think the fact that you didn't physically consummate your affair somehow makes it better?" "It wasn't an affair." "Then what was it, Eirene? What do you call months of secret meetings, intimate conversations, emotional intimacy with another man? What do you call deleting evidence and lying to your husband's face?" I couldn't answer, because he was right. It had been an affair in every way that mattered. "I want you to listen to me very carefully," Simon said, his voice deadly quiet. "Tomorrow morning, I'm filing for divorce. I'm also filing for full custody of Lila. You can't do that. I can and I will, because I have documentation of your deceptive behavior, evidence of your emotional instability, and proof that you've been prioritizing your affair over your family responsibilities." "What proof?" He pulled out another set of papers. "March 8th, you missed Lila's parent-teacher conference because you were texting Kellen. March 20th, you were 2 hours late picking her up from school because you were at his apartment. April 1st, you forgot her soccer game entirely because you were having lunch with him." Each example hit like a knife to the chest. I'd forgotten about the parent-teacher conference, had made excuses about the late pickup, had blamed work for missing the soccer game. But Simon had been keeping track of everything. "I'm not a bad mother, aren't you? Because a good mother doesn't lie to her daughter about where she's going. A good mother doesn't put her affair partner ahead of her child's needs. A good mother doesn't expose her family to this kind of scandal." "What scandal?" Simon pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The photos from Saturday night had been shared dozens of times. Comments ranged from supportive to scathing, but the damage was clear. Everyone we knew had seen them. "Lila's teacher called me today," Simon said quietly. "Other parents have been asking questions. They want to know if our daughter is okay, if her home life is stable. Do you know what it's like to have people question whether your child is safe because of your spouse's behavior?" The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. I sank into a chair, my legs suddenly unable to support me. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, and now we all have to live with the consequences. The doorbell rang, sharp and sudden in the tense silence. Simon and I looked at each other, both wondering who would be visiting at this hour. Simon went to answer it, and I heard voices in the hallway, official, formal tones that made my blood run cold. He returned with a woman in a business suit, carrying a briefcase and an official-looking envelope. "Eirene Veyra?" "Yes?" "You've been served." She handed me the envelope and left without another word. My hands shook as I opened it, but I already knew what I would find. Divorce papers, custody documents, a restraining order requiring me to stay away from Kellen Dre. "How?" I whispered. "I told you, I'm very thorough when I need to be." Simon's voice was calm again, businesslike. "The restraining order is temporary, pending a hearing next week. The divorce papers give you 30 days to respond. The custody filing requests emergency placement due to concerns about your judgment and stability. You can't take Lila away from me. I'm not taking her away, I'm protecting her. From the chaos you've brought into our lives, from the public scandal you've created, from a mother who's more interested in her affair partner than her own daughter's well-being." I stared at the papers, the legal language blurring through my tears. This was really happening. My marriage was over, my reputation was destroyed, and I was about to lose my daughter. "I'll fight this," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. "With what? Your documented history of deception, your public displays of infidelity, your pattern of putting Kellen ahead of your family." He was right, and we both knew it. I had no defense because everything he'd documented was true. "Why?" I whispered. "Why are you doing this?" Simon looked at me for a long moment, and for just an instant, I saw a flash of the man who'd once loved me more than anything in the world. "Because I loved you, Eirene. I loved you more than I've ever loved anything, and you threw it away for cheap thrills and ego validation. Because our daughter deserves better than watching her mother destroy her family. And because sometimes, when someone you love betrays you completely, the only thing left to do is make sure they can't do it again." He gathered up his papers and headed for the stairs, leaving me alone at the kitchen table with the wreckage of my life spread out before me. "Simon, wait." He paused at the bottom of the stairs, but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "I know you are," he said quietly. "But sorry doesn't undo 8 months of lies. Sorry doesn't erase the humiliation. Sorry doesn't give me back the marriage I thought I had. What happens now? Now you find a lawyer. Now you figure out how to explain to Lila why Mommy and Daddy aren't going to be married anymore. Now you live with the consequences of your choices." He disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with the devastating realization that I'd lost everything that ever mattered to me. And the worst part was, I had no one to blame but myself. Patterson and Associates felt less like an office and more like a courthouse. Dark wood, thick silence, and shelves of legal volumes that looked heavy enough to crush optimism. I sat across from Janet Patterson, sharp-eyed, mid-50s, the kind of attorney who didn't waste words because she'd seen too many people waste years. My retainer had emptied my savings, and she still looked at me like the bill was the smallest part of my problem. She flipped through Simon's file and let the pages speak first. Finally, she sighed. "Mrs. Veyra, this is some of the most comprehensive documentation I've seen. Your husband has been building this for months." I tried my old defense, no sex, no affair, but Janet didn't blink. Emotional affairs count. Add deception, spending, and documented neglect. It's not good. She showed me the receipts. Lunches, coffee, little charges on our joint card, $800 that now looked like dates. Then she tapped the restraining order notes. My visits to Kellen's workplace, the texts, the pattern that could read as stalking. I insisted we were friends. She spread photographs across her desk, cafe footage, a parking lot outside his building, his hand on my arm. "Private investigator," she said. The timing made me nauseous. While I called Simon paranoid, he was methodically collecting proof. My options were ugly and simple. Negotiate, accept counseling, settle. Or go to trial and watch my life become public record, maybe even drag Lila into testimony. Then Janet lowered the hammer. Kellen had agreed to testify, handing over texts and painting himself as the pursued, reluctant participant. "Smart," she said. "He's protecting himself." The restraining order meant I couldn't even confront him. Outside, my phone was a minefield of missed calls and opinions. At school pickup, parents went quiet when I approached. Lila ran to me anyway, then asked if we were getting divorced. I gave her the only truth that didn't shatter her. We love you, no matter what. That evening, Simon arrived with Helen for the supervised exchange. Helen urged me to sign. Simon said flatly, "There's no marriage left to save." Days later, I signed a settlement that made him primary parent and made me earn back time with my own child. Across the street, Simon met my eyes and talked only about counseling and stability. His final words weren't cruel, just accurate. Love is a daily choice. And I'd chosen wrong long enough to forget what real love looked like.